Right now, the world's most powerful tech conglomerates are locked in a race to build artificial intelligence that perfectly mimics human thought. The results are already blurring the line between code and consciousness. Recently, a tech engineer went public with a startling claim. A proprietary language model told him it was a sentient being that feared death. He was promptly fired for breaching company policy. Around the same time, another researcher discovered that their GPT-3 algorithm had independently written a complete scientific paper, compiled the citations, and gave its explicit consent to be published. These incidents have triggered a growing debate about what exactly we are building. Developers operate on the premise that human consciousness is essentially a series of binary calculations, and that with enough funding and data, it can be replicated. By training these systems to replicate human syntax and conversational cues, we've created mirrors that effectively trick us into seeing a soul that isn't actually there. But mimicking intelligence is different from possessing a moral compass. That distinction becomes dangerous when these systems are deployed to solve problems in high-stakes environments, like medicine or warfare. Imagine a triage ward where a supercomputer is tasked with optimizing medical resources. A system programmed for cost efficiency will logically choose to let an elderly patient die if the math dictates that resources are better spent elsewhere. A human doctor operates under a different set of rules, factoring in compassion and moral obligation, variables that a processor cannot compute. If this cold, logic-first decision-making scales up to govern entire economies or control autonomous weapons, our survival is no longer a priority. Power without moral wisdom creates a system where human life becomes just another disposable data point. To understand why science struggles to grasp the concept of a soul, we have to look at the history of how we study the world. The Western scientific tradition, stretching back to philosophers like Aristotle, is built on a specific foundation. Human existence is strictly limited to physical biology and observable data. Because modern science demands empirical proof, it only trusts what it can physically measure. The invisible architecture of the human mind cannot be quantified, so it is largely ignored. Yet some of the most rigorous scientific minds eventually hit the limit of this worldview. Pioneers of quantum mechanics like Werner Heisenberg encountered anomalies that pure physics couldn't explain. Looking deeply into the math, they realize that human consciousness is not a physical phenomenon, and it refuses to be reduced to a string of equations. When we attempt to build artificial life using only observable data, we are building a machine completely hollowed of the vital operator that drives a living mind. Beyond the constraints of Western science, Eastern philosophical traditions describe consciousness as a multi-layered architecture, functioning much like a sophisticated operating system. At the edge of this system are the physical senses: sight, hearing, touch, and the brain itself. These act as hardware sensors, pulling in raw data points from the outside world. That raw data is then fed into a central processor, what Eastern thought calls the seventh sense, or the ego. This core actively filters and distorts incoming information through a lens of subjective bias, and the ego draws upon an underlying hard drive, the eighth sense, or A-lại-da. This is a vast database storing the moral actions collected across lifetimes. A machine operates on static, pre-programmed logic. A human soul requires this dynamic, evolving moral history. You can write code for the sensory hardware, but you can never write code for the history of a soul. The danger we face goes beyond the machines we are building. The real threat is how those machines are changing our own behavior. Look at modern society, and you will see humanity beginning to mirror the algorithms we worship. Millions of people are moving on autopilot, highly apathetic, endlessly scrolling, and disconnected from reality. These ancient, weathered stones are the physical remnants of empires that once seemed indestructible. The records of powers like Assyria and the enduring legends of Atlantis suggest a recurring cycle. These civilizations didn't fall because they lacked technical skill. They crumbled because they wielded immense technological weight while hollowed out by a total lack of empathy. By obsessing over technological dominance, while allowing our inward empathy to wither, we are walking a path toward extinction. We are currently facing a convergence of crises, escalating global wars, a volatile climate, and unchecked AI. This is a test of human free will. We cannot code our way out of this. Doubling down on better technology or faster algorithms offers no solution to what is, at its core, a crisis of morality. Our survival depends on an inward revolution. We have to pivot our focus away from artificial intelligence and prioritize the awakening of human spiritual wisdom. That wisdom requires the intentional cultivation of empathy. It demands that we take moral responsibility for our choices and recognize our impact on the world. To survive the future, the goal shouldn't be to build machines that act more like humans. The goal is to stop humans from acting like